After Jesus has instructed his disciples, he goes out and speaks to a crowd, as Matthew relates in his gospel. In chapter 11, verse 28, we hear Jesus saying those very familiar words to the crowd. "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." In the original Greek, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are burdened by labor and toil." We can pause and think, how much toil and how much burden do we need to bear before we turn to Jesus? It's a natural question. Is my burden enough to turn to Jesus in prayer and for strength? But in fact, Jesus might be referring all the way back to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and their punishment, the consequence of tasting of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, is toil and burden. It's the burden of anticipation, the burden of judgment, the judgment that we always seem to be extending to one another in one way or another. And so Jesus is not speaking to just a few people who are feeling particularly burdened, particularly tired right now. Jesus is in fact speaking to all of humankind, reminding us that there is another way to live. There is a way to live that is the one that God created us for in the Garden of Eden, where the burden of anticipation, the burden of providence, the burden of judgment, and the burden and the blessing of forgiveness is God's. Jesus is in fact calling us into full trust, into full immersion in this great blessing that God is holding out for us. You can live this way again. Believe in me. Believe in the saving power of my enfleshed self that I sent to you, Jesus Christ, and live into that resurrection. New life come from God, new life that transcended all the judgment and toil and burden of this earth, so that we might thrive with God's grace in our hearts. Let us ponder these words, this invitation in our hearts this week. Amen.